But upon its launch in the late 80s, I have to confess, I wasn't entirely sold. Partly because we already had Carlsberg, but also because I was only 8. Hello, I'm Lawrence and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to beer. Growing up in Britain, I was no stranger to beer, although most of the ones that we drink come from places where English isn't the primary language, like Denmark, the Netherlands or Newcastle. I have Geordie friends, I can say that. But after moving to America, I was opened up to a whole new world of brewed goods, or bads, depending on how you look at it. But I do want to make a distinction here because I was certainly aware of some American beers even when I was growing up in Britain. I was reminiscing the other day about this advert with Jeff Goldblum from the early 1990s.
Don't delay. Buy one today.
And as a kid, all I could think was, oh look, it's the guy from The Fly trying to sell an American beer to a British audience. And I later found out that it's a German beer brewed in Northampton. What was Jeff Goldblum? It's not like he was hard up for cash. Anyway, the point is, in today's video, I'm going to take a look at 7 beer brands that I only drank after moving to America. Popular doesn't always mean good. I just want to note that before we get underway, there are local, regional beers here in the United States that are definitely worth your time and mine. And so without further ado, let's take a look at those popular beers. I'll be honest with you, when I first moved to the United States, my knowledge of American history wasn't quite what it is today. I probably thought that Samuel Adams was the long-lost brother of Amy until I picked up a bottle in Indianapolis. Now, bear in mind, this is still roughly 1,000 miles from where the drink originated. It was launched in 1984 in Boston to honor the founding father, Samuel Adams. And when I discovered that fact, I was able to justify the taste by saying to myself, does drinking this make me look learned and cultured in some all-knowing of history kind of way? And after I nursed a hangover the next day, everybody's answer to that question was pretty unanimous. I think when I lived in Britain, Budweiser was sort of the most well-known of all of the American beers. And that might have something to do with the fact that it is actually widely available in the United Kingdom, but Brits tend to be suspicious of American beer, which might account for why I never drank it. That said, I was 18 and easily taken in by catchphrases when the company launched its "What's up?" commercials. And the phrase briefly caught on in the UK even outside of the context of beer. I remember friends calling me up and leading with that question, although it was less of a question and more of an abstract noise. I want to say we got the ads themselves, but people were picking them up from other sources like wrestling or Scary Movie or A Nightmare. Anyway, launched as long ago as 1876 in St. Louis, this is a product of Anheuser-Busch. Is it Anheuser or Anheuser-Busch? Which is a huge American brewing company. And St. Louis is a good segue into this. The word bush has many meanings in the United States, one of which is anatomical, but you also have 2 former presidents, a British rock band, Busch Gardens, and Busch Beer. This low-alcohol pale lager was launched in 1955 as Busch Bavarian Beer. And just like some of the other entries on this list, there are many varieties of Busch Beer. Or should I say, Anheuser-Busch. We're going to have to look that up. Basically, the same company that owns this beer also owns Budweiser products. And my first meaningful association with Busch Beer happened to coincide with my first meaningful association with baseball. I went to see the Cardinals play and lose in a game in 2011. The name of the arena? Busch Stadium. The name on the beer products? Busch, and probably Budweiser. And I don't know if this says more about baseball than it does about Busch Beer, but the more of it I drank, the less I understood the rules of baseball. However, my visit to the city of St. Louis did happen the same year the Cardinals went on to win the World Series. A similar thing happened after my first visit to Boston in 2004, and after I moved to Chicago in 2016. I am a lucky charm, especially after I've had beer. And if memory serves me correct, the first beer that I had after moving to the United States was this. I think it's worth pointing out that Britain doesn't really have a defined non-American equivalent of light beer. That is, beer that's low on both calories and alcoholic content. And so by the time I moved to the United States, this drink, which is owned by the 2005 merger of Molson of Canada and the US company Coors, had a little bit of a novelty value. And this might be quite weird given the existence of Bud Light and Miller Lite, but I was always a contrarian, right? Who needs the big shots like Lennon and McCartney when you've got George Harrison? To be clear, I'm not comparing Budweiser to John Lennon. And it was a long time ago, and I don't think I've touched the stuff since, but my initial reaction was, my sweet lord, isn't this mediocre? There was just something in the way this beer made me think, I haven't got my mind set on you. I hope you enjoyed the George Harrison references there. But to be fair, I was in my 20s when I moved here, you know. I'd drink just about anything that somebody gave me. That even included this. As with Budweiser, I was culturally aware of Miller Lite even long before moving to the United States. As it happens, it was sold for a time in the UK, but upon its launch in the late 80s, I have to confess, I wasn't entirely sold. Partly because we already had Carlsberg, but also because I was only 8. Anyway, 20 years later, it was pulled from UK shelves at about the same time that I was. But, like me, it continues to thrive in the American market. At the same time, a foreign import not called Lawrence Brown was doing the same thing. I'll be honest with you, I don't normally have the time of day for beer ads, but the most interesting man in the world ads became this kind of must-watch event right after I moved to the United States. For those who don't remember or didn't live in North America at that time, the ads featured a montage of hilarious moments in the life of the most interesting man in the world. A smooth-talking elderly wise man with a beard. Picture me in 30 years. Almost entirely because of the ads, I drank this Mexican import for the first time about a decade ago. I don't really remember much about how it tastes, but for about 15 minutes there, I did feel desperately interesting. Now that could be because the bar staff had just asked me which part of Australia are you from, and no, it was definitely that, because when I told them that I was from England, all of the affection went out of their eyes. Anyway, 10 years on, I don't always make listicle videos, but when I do, I prefer the number 7. Sam Adams originated in Boston, Busch Beer and Budweiser in St. Louis, Coors Light just outside of Denver, and Miller Lite in Milwaukee. Up until now, the other American-made beers on this list all had one thing in common. I've personally visited the city of their origin, not so with Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. And this might account for why when I first tried it 44 years ago in April of this year, I was taken in by its mystique. Ooh, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale sounds like something John Muir probably drank had it not been launched until 1980. As a person with pandemic-induced designs on exploring the Sierra Nevada, this drink gave me both the inspiration to do it and the drunkenness to believe that I could. But, and of course 4 decades is a long time ago, I think I even liked the taste. And I think I have a little bit of respect for this beer because I can't imagine it being used in sentences that start with "this halftime show was brought to you by." And so maybe deep down, this is the George Harrison of popular American beers. Everything else is just Ringo. Thank you for watching my latest Vlogmas episode. Hopefully you've downed enough beers yourselves that you feel compelled to hit subscribe. And a big cheers to all of my patrons who make these videos possible. If you would like to become a patron of Lost in the Pond, you can do so at patreon.com/lostinthepond. Until next time, cheers. Still got the lid on it.